Well, good evening, Cedar Falls. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, April 17th, 2023. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Schultz.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Ganfield. Tyers.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
6 members present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I understand that Councilmember Ganfield will be joining us shortly, partly through the meeting. So with that, if you're willing and able, if you wouldn't mind joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item tonight is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve regular meeting of April 3rd?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Changes? Any from the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passes. And Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda revisions tonight?
I have no agenda revisions on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Looking at no special presentations tonight, so that'll take us over to public forum, where speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. Does anyone from the public wish to speak in public forum tonight? Ms. Beach, name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Rosemary Beach, Western Home Community, Cedar Falls. I want to thank the council for listening to the work session. My hope for restrooms for people here in Cedar Falls and visitors here. And I appreciate that the city staff has also spent time on that. So I want to thank people for that, because I didn't know it'd be such a conversation about restrooms when I started out with this whole things. My main feeling is for people of our age, which is in the city of Cedar Falls, which has so many places where old people live, that we need to be recognized in the center of our city as people who have spent their money here for years, most of us. And now that, of course, has become the problem is we don't have any money to build restrooms. So I was somewhat interested in the council raise their salaries. That's good. Maybe we could invest a little bit of salary from people. And there are other businesses and such who would support and help with that. I don't know that the city gets involved with asking that kind of information or not, of what somebody would offer a business contractor. So anyway, I'm thanking you all. I would encourage people who think this is a need in Cedar Falls to call your council person and say, we need public bathrooms. We need to take care of them, because that's a big question. So thank you, and I appreciate that the effort has gone into it to bring it to the top, maybe almost to a top of a heap. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Always glad to have you with us. Does anyone else wish to speak in public forum tonight? Yes, Mr. Wingert. Name and address for the record, please, sir.
Thank you. Brian Wingert, 2110 Flynn Drive, Cedar Falls. Got a couple things here. Just listening to Rosemary over the last short time here. We are going to do a new restaurant at 317 Main Street, and we're in the design phases of it right now. It'd be a pretty central location down there to maybe have some sort of public-private partnership where some handicap buttons are installed in the relevant locations. Again, like you said, I'm of a different age and don't quite know a whole lot about it, but there are some things that maybe we could install in that restaurant as we go that would help at least ease city's cost and some of their pain. So that's on the table. We'd be happy to look at what that looks like as we're building out the restaurant too. So just wanted to throw that in there. As far as the committee meeting on the workforce housing tax credits, just a little bit of information maybe that Stephanie wasn't aware of. I've kind of gone down this road. The first project downtown, Councilman Schultz kind of helped me go through some neighborhood meetings on that cottage project. And I think one of you had a question of what does it look like? Maybe it gets built, maybe it doesn't. There is a requirement that if you do get awarded the tax credits, and they are awarded at the end of a project, that it has to be built to get the tax credits. If it's not built, the tax credits go back into the pool for the state. And I don't believe, but I'll double check, that city match is required up front. So again, if it doesn't get built, it's probably not allocated to the developer. So those are some things that I think that I answer at least a couple of those questions. And then if you just look at the dollars and cents of it, I'm not convinced that I'm going to build this project, and you can believe me if you want or not, but in the market that we're in, it's expensive. It's very expensive to build these houses. These are cottages. They're verging on tiny homes, and they're going to be over $300,000 for costs into these things. And so you look at those costs, and the reason we do these tax credit requests is that it allows us flexibility on the sale price at the end to maybe offer the consumer a little bit less of a sales price. And so now we have housing that maybe was going to be $350,000 or $360,000, and we get a $15,000 tax break, so maybe we can offer them for $335,000. So those are the things that you got to think about when somebody comes asking for, in my case, it'd be a $12,000 ask. Almost every single dollar of that investment would be returned in the first year that these houses are fully assessed. There's no tax break, there's no tax abatement on these properties. Unlike the urban renewal area where there is tax abatement, this fully hits the tax roll as soon as it's assessed. So the way I calculate it, 3/4 of that is returned in the first year, and then $20,000 annually after that would be the city's portion of the tax base of these 12 units. So $20,000 a year for a $12,000 ask seems like pretty good economic development and a good investment by the city, in my opinion. So that's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Winger. Does anyone else wish to speak in public forum tonight? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Kyle Nelson. I live at 2714 Round Street in Cedar Falls. I just moved back to the area this last summer, and I lived out in Corvallis, Oregon. My wife and I brought our family back here recently, and I want to propose a possible code amendment that would involve this property, 2714. It was owned by Comp Systems. It was a group home, and I bought it from them, and we've been turning it back into a residence. And I approached the builder's office in City Hall here, wanting to build on that property. It's an acre lot, and I wanted to build a double garage that would have an office below and then a ADU studio apartment above it. I have a construction business in town, so we wanted the garage for some workshop and storage space and an office for the business, and then wanted to use the upper level to have some flexibility for guest space or a mother-in-law suite or some kind of rental property. I had a property like this in our place in Oregon, and it helped us to be able to afford owning that house when I couldn't have afforded in that city without it. So I wanted to do something similar here, and then as I was trying to do that, learned that we don't have code outside of kind of a downtown district for ADUs here in Cedar Falls, and the office suggested that I come in here and propose it as a possible code amendment. And so that's something I wanted to throw out. If we would consider adding code to this, I would love to be a pilot for something like this, to try to figure out what kind of codes we could create that could create this kind of building that would add some property or some value to a property like mine, but we could do it in a way that it doesn't distract or make the neighborhoods look bad or those kind of things. And so it's something I'd love to do at my property, and I know that the code doesn't allow it right now, and wanted to throw that out as a possibility that I'd love to be a part of if
Thank you, Mr.
we
Nelson.
could consider it.
Yeah, we've been discussing that these last couple of, I guess, 2 years now about accessory dwelling units. Have those available in the downtown area, and certainly there's an option to extend that out to other places. Whether or not we do major code overhaul over the rest of the cities, that certainly is another way to add value to a property. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in public forum tonight? Seeing none, then I will close the public forum tonight and bring us over to staff updates. Mr. Gaines, do we have any staff updates for tonight?
Uh, Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have Stephanie Sheets give an update on our job fair that we had this past Saturday.
Okay, thank you. Director Sheets.
Yeah, so we were excited to hold our first job fair on Saturday. That was on April 15th from 10 to 2 p.m. at the Public Works Complex. The goal of the job fair was to fill seasonal, full-time, and part-time positions in the city, including Public Works, the Recreation Division, Public Safety, and the Hearst Center. So we had staff available that was there to talk about any of the positions that we have open, as well as any future opportunities if people were interested in keeping us on the radar. So we're happy to report that we did take in about 10 different applications. We also had several mowers come to the table, so we're excited that we'll be able to do our mowing operations and have some people in place. And we're looking forward to the future of doing more job fairs, probably earlier in the spring, and hopefully continuing to help with employment needs that we have throughout the city.
Okay, thank you. Are there options on the city website for those opportunities that still exist? where
Yes,
people can
good
find
point,
them?
Mayor. Thank you. Yes, we have a number of jobs posted on the city website and a lot of seasonal ones. We still have lifeguard and swimming instructor positions to fill, so we'd love to have any applicants online or following up with the rec center, for example, for those particular ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other updates for tonight, Mr. Gaines? All right, so taking us over into special order of business, item 2 is a hearing on a complaint issued to Baba Farid LLC, doing business as Great Wall China, 2125 College Street, Suite D, for a first tobacco violation. Now we have our Assistant City Attorney, Sam Anderson, will provide the information for this case. Mr. Anderson, the floor is yours.
I'm Sam Anderson, Assistant City Attorney, Solicitor in Court in Waterloo. Gulen Farouk Sheikh Qureshi was issued a citation for a violation of Iowa Code Section 538A21 on February 6 for providing tobacco to a minor. He pleaded guilty by paying the citation on March 3 of 2003. After several failed attempts to serve him by registered mail, we ended up serving him personally on April 6, 2023. He is also the registered agent for the Baba Farid LLC DBA Great Wall of China. So he has been served. There is a plea of guilty on record, and for the first violation, the code section says the local authority shall assess a penalty upon hearing a notice for a first violation in the amount, it'd be a civil penalty in the amount of $300. And so that's what we would be asking for here. And I do have, if the council wants it, I've got references to the documents that support what I've just said.
Okay, and are the same materials in the council packet?
It might already be, I don't know.
Okay, so we have that information available
What
to us.
probably isn't part of the packet would be the information of his plea of guilty and the return of service.
Okay,
Everything else probably is in the packet.
okay. So if we don't necessarily need to pass that around, I think we're okay. All right, so is that the oral comment? And if we have also the complainant or the defendant here, if you'd like to speak as well, sir?
Yes, I accept it, and I work inside the kitchen, and I'm diabetic patient. That time my sugar was going high, I come on counter, and it's my mistake, so I have to, whatever condition I have to, but I want to pay the fine, whatever is there.
Okay, thank you, sir. So with that, I'll close the hearing and take us over to Part B, which is approving and authorizing execution of an order assessing penalty relative to a first tobacco violation regarding Great Wall China, 2125 College Street, Suite D. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any council questions or discussion?
So they'll, if they vote
Okay, seeing none.
not guilty, and you'll be assessed the fine. And I'll talk to you in just a minute. Just wait out there and talk.
So moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
I have fasting, so 10 minutes left to fast, my fasting time.
Yeah, I'll be right
Yes.
out.
Just bear with us here momentarily on the tech side.
Oh, it says voting is not open.
Jackie's phone. Get Jackie's. I can do it. She thinks she has it.
There, mine's working now.
All right.
Okay, voting in place now. Seeing results here.
Six voting aye, one voting nay.
Well, with council member,
Absent.
yeah, absent, so as long as that's logged as absent, that's fine. Okay, so that does pass and takes us over to item 3, which is a hearing on a complaint issued to Cedar Sky Incorporated, doing business as Bannies at 2128 College Street for a third tobacco violation. Again, we have Attorney Anderson giving the information for this case as well. So the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, with regard to this one, right before the meeting began, a representative from Bannies came in and wanted to work out a settlement, or actually sign the settlement agreement. So I provided that to them, but since I don't have money in hand, I'd like to continue this one for a month so we can get it worked out, and that one could potentially be settled.
Okay. So we do not have the defendant for that one then to
No,
discuss?
she took the form and.
Okay.
and
Fine.
I'll let her
So, in that case, do we need to have a vote to continue the public hearing? Is that a roll call vote or a voice vote?
Voice vote's fine.
Okay. So, with that information, it's been requested to continue the public hearing for 1 month. So we would see this again mid-May then, second meeting in May. And with the voice vote, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we will continue that public hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So item 4 is our public hearing on the FY24 budget for the city of Cedar Falls. And we do want to have Councilmember Ganfield here for that. I believe that he is due back shortly, if I understand. Since we have other business in front of us, would council consent to taking care of the rest of that business first?
Sure.
Until Councilmember Ganfield returns?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any objections to that? All right, so we will truck along with everything except item 4 and come back to that as soon as we can. So I know some of you are here just for that. So item 5 is a public hearing to consider entering in a proposed purchase, sale, and development agreement and minimum assessment agreement, and to consider conveyance of city-owned real estate to CF Storage LLC. On this one, again, we're going to have Councilmember Ganfield potentially on the phone for it for a vote. He is not here or available on phone, correct? So if council will consent, I'd like to delay that one.
Sure.
Okay. Item 6 is a public hearing on the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Ashworth Drive roadway expansion project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passes. And do we have any written communications filed for the item?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. With staff comments, Mr. Dave Wicke has the floor for us. City Engineer.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight's public hearing is for the Ashworth Drive roadway extension project. What this project does, it extends Ashworth Drive from Carroll Drive eastward to Hudson to make that connection to Hudson. Project includes new pavement, sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer. There'll be a new signalized intersection at that intersection, and also along with that will be on the east side of Hudson Road, realign that intersection to match up. The estimated total cost for this project is $1,735,651. Project will be funded by Capital Projects and Street Construction Fund. And then just to note, this is sort of like the first stage to getting that Ashworth connection to get over to Aldridge School.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wiki. Before going to the council, does anyone from the public wish to comment on the item tonight? Seeing none, then I will consider the public hearing closed for this item and take us over to Part 6E, which is a resolution approving and adopting the plans, specification, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Ashworth Drive roadway expansion project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions or discussion. Yes, Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. Mr. Wiki, was there any consideration on a roundabout? Since we're realigning both sides, it looks like a pretty extensive project. Consideration for a roundabout would be warranted.
So prior to this project really getting started, we did have a traffic study done for this intersection, and also falling back to that previous Hudson Road corridor traffic study, it lined up to be conducive for this intersection to be signalized and not a roundabout.
Is that another hand here? Councilmember Schultz.
Mr. Wiki, this is really close to Eric Road, correct?
Eric Road is the next intersection to the south.
And I was curious, and the same with Mr. Cruz's, of, you're going to have a light, and I think it's like a block and a half, and you're going to have another light, or am I thinking it's not that close?
It's about a half mile away.
Okay. And the other question I had regarding your comment where saying that this is phase one or part of our access to Aldridge School.
Well, it's our first kind of project to get underway to work towards, building out those connections to eventually get to Aldridge School.
And so we're looking long-term because we've had discussions, I know regarding trying to resolve traffic and safety concerns at Aldridge School. I'm sure Mr. Sires has got some thoughts on this as well. So is this going to resolve safety concerns in that area or be a step towards that?
It'll certainly be a step towards that.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Sires.
We had pushed hard to have Ironwood extended. This short stint here for $1,700,000 is not going to alleviate any traffic off of Eric Road, and it's still not going to connect to the front side of the school. I'd almost like to put into connection with this is we need 2 lanes around that school from the back side to the front side because that's where all the traffic bottles up. I don't know why we started with this and not Ironwood, and this is not going to alleviate any of the, am I not correct? This isn't going to alleviate Eric Road until far later, probably 2 or 3 years.
In the short term, no.
You're right. It's not going to, right,
We will
in
see
the
that
short
benefit
term.
down the road.
But it'll probably be 3 years as opposed to just one north coming out of Ironwood.
It'll be in the future. I don't have the exact time frame on that, but yeah, most likely.
Why did we decide to go with this road first and not the Ironwood to the north that we pushed so hard for, the whole council?
This was programmed in our CIP previously. That was approved, and so that's how we ended up deciding to do this project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I could probably add a little bit to that.
Yes, please, Mr. Gaines.
We're also working with the developer on Ironwood for an agreement, and just talking with Attorney Rogers, it's our understanding that that agreement will be at the next council meeting to move those 2 roads forward.
Okay, thank you. In that area, there's, for Eric Road, north of that, you have a fairly new subdivision, right? Kind of heading up toward Richard Road in that area. Would those vehicles be able to then use this new access way to get out rather than use Eric Road once it's built?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. There's two access points. There's Harriet and there's Eric Road. A lot of the northerly homes, I would say, in the Prairie Winds and West try to use Harriet. That is an unsignalized intersection, forcing a lot of people down to Eric. This would alleviate a second access point or second signalized intersection for those individuals to get out onto Hudson.
Okay, so did I understand right that this would alleviate some of the traffic on Eric Road?
If people choose to use Ashworth to get out onto Hudson, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Cruz.
Mr. Wiki, the Hudson corridor study that you referred to, and it may be before your time here, but when was that completed?
I don't recall the exact date off the top of my head. It was a few years back.
Okay. The reason I was wondering, my thought was that it was quite a while ago, but the desire and acceptance of roundabouts has increased rather dramatically in the latter years here. That if we're putting two signalized intersections relatively close to each other, we're just congesting the flow of Hudson and slowing it down to Councilman Schultz's point, really. I'd really like to look at the feasibility of a roundabout there because we're putting them in other corridors that have lots of traffic. They can be built for lots of traffic, and we're tearing up both sides of the street there. That's my concern. I mean, so.
I think the long-term picture for that whole Hudson Road corridor is that, down the road, it'll be a big undertaking when it comes time to reconstruct that corridor, and it's going to occur over many phases over a period of time. Prior to getting into that reconstruction work, I'm sure we'll have an updated traffic study, and it'll evaluate the whole corridor at that time. And, I'm sure the recommendations at that time will most likely be different than what they are for now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hardy.
I like a good roundabout. They travel well. But in this budgetary confinement that we're in and trying to save money, I can guarantee you a roundabout there is going to cost $3.5 million more. And
guarantee?
Yeah. Based off how all of our how much all of our estimates are coming in and how much it costs us to do the roundabout at, how much did the roundabout at Green Hill and Maine cost, roughly? Does anybody remember?
3.5.
3.5 million. So
That had a lot of utilities
it's,
changing, but
yeah, roundabouts, my only point is that roundabouts are expensive up front. And yeah, we can argue about the cost savings and we can go down that road, but it's not the time or place now. I think what we're doing is we're trying to take the first step to alleviate traffic for the Eric Road, and the bulk of this construction is the extension, and the intersection is the minor part of it. And when we look at this road in the future to reconstruct the concrete and reconstruct everything, well, then that's the conversation time for roundabouts. At this point in time, I just think it's wise to get this going so that we actually have the extension built and we have that possible alleviation, and so we can continue to move forward with Ironwood and all the other options. So anyway, that's all I have. I'm in support of this.
Yes, yeah, Councilor DeBar.
The traffic study that they're talking about was done prior to University Avenue being done. And the main thing that came out of that was that they did not recommend the roundabouts because of the high event traffic due to UNI. And it also, this was not part of the traffic study, but the improvements to help with the traffic on Harriet will be very important to get this done.
Any other comments or questions from council?
Just a quick one.
Sure, certainly.
Mr. Wiki, what's the threshold to not have a signal intersection if Harriet is non-signalized? Eric is signalized. I mean, people are feasibly slowing down for Eric Road lights, are they not? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
It's a half mile.
So I guess I'm not quite understanding what you're asking.
What prevents us from needing to put a traffic light at Harriet? I mean, if we don't have one at Harriet, how far is that up the road? Another half a block or half a mile?
Roughly, I believe.
So I'm wondering,
So
can we get away with not having traffic lights there at this Ashworth?
once we establish this connection here, this Ashworth to Hudson, and it alleviates traffic loading on the Harriet intersection, then that criteria that would require a signal that might have to go at that intersection would be considerably diminished.
Is there a thoroughfare on the other side of Harriet that you wouldn't be connecting, like this one has a thoroughfare into the other subdivision? Do you know offhand? Just kind of.
I don't believe so at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, seeing none, then we are at item 6E, the resolution approving and adopting the plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the Ashworth Drive roadway expansion project. It's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
I have one member absent, Mr. Mayor, and 5 voting yay and 1 voting nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that passes as well. It takes us over to item 7, which is a public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to signage for civic and institutional uses in the downtown character district. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Takes us to written communication. Do we have any filed, Madam Clerk?
I have no written communication on fire, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Looking at staff comments, we have Ms. Karen Howard from Planning Department. So the floor is yours, ma'am.
Good evening. This is a fairly minor code amendment to the downtown character district code. We were approached by St. Patrick's School. They wanted to replace an existing monument sign. Their property is currently located in the Urban General 2 district of the downtown character district. That particular district is intended for urban mixed-use development, and so it didn't allow new monument signs to be installed. So, but institutional and civic uses like churches and schools, of course, are a little bit different than urban mixed-use buildings. And they often have open spaces that are larger, playgrounds and gathering spaces, parking lots, and they often have electronic messaging signs as well. So we thought it was reasonable to try to look at the code and see if there was a solution for them. And in the downtown code, of course, churches, schools, and other institutional uses are valuable to our downtown and are part of the character of the downtown. So the solution really was to look at what signage is allowed for churches and schools in other areas of the community. In the neighborhood districts of the downtown character district, the signage allowance, because it's more residential in character, we just applied the residential zoning standards for signage. So we felt like that was a pretty good solution, fairly simple to do. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed with that and recommends approval of a code amendment to allow signage for civic institutional uses in the entirety of the downtown character district, according to the same sign standards that we have in our R1 district. I have the actual language on the screen. If there's any questions about it, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Before we get those questions, does anyone from the public request a comment on the item? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed for this item and bring us over to item 7E, which is passing an ordinance amending Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to signage for civic and institutional uses in the downtown character district upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions and discussion. Seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Ganfield absent, all the rest voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass. Because it's an ordinance change, this is the first reading, so it will come back before council for 2 additional readings in the next 2 meetings. If it's approved at that point, then it becomes code. So moving on to item, actually, let's see, how should we do this? We have Councilmember Ganfield back. We've got,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I'd recommend we just continue on, and then at the end, we'll circle back, as it may, then when we're done, we're done.
You mean do 8 and 9 and then go back?
Correct, yeah.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
so to finish out our public hearings and then go back into item 4, then follow up with old business and consent calendar after. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So any objections to that? All right, great. So we'll truck on for 8 and 9 and then budget after that. So item 8 is a public hearing on the proposed rezoning from A1 Agricultural District to R1 Residence District, approximately 3 acres of property located west of the Hudson Road and Ashworth Drive intersection, FNA 4919 Hudson Road. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications filed?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Tom Weintraut is going to be our speaker tonight for this item, so the floor is yours, sir.
Council. Why are we not moving forward?
Been asking that question for years.
There we go. Okay, we're back to that Ashworth Hudson Road intersection. This property is currently zoned agriculture. It's one of only 2 properties in that area that were not zoned for residential. There's a request to rezone a 2.38 acre portion that belongs to Mr. Nichols, as well as the property the city bought for the Ashford Road extension. The R1 district allows for 1 and 2 family residential. The area surrounding this property is all residential. It complies with the future land use map because R1 is a low-density residential development, and most of the property around there is that low density. There is access to public services and really well street network once Ashford gets in there. So the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this at the last minute, and they recommend approval of RZ 2301, a request to rezone 2 parcels totaling 3.05 acres from A1 agriculture to R1 residential.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weintraut. Before going to the council, does anyone from the public wish to speak on the item? Seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed for this and take us over to Part 8E, which is passing an ordinance amending the zoning map by moving 3 acres of property located west of the Hudson Road and Ashworth Drive intersection, FNA 4919 Hudson Road, from A1 agricultural and placing the same in R1 residence district upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions and discussion, if there is any. It seemed like a very straightforward request, and that's what we're planning on happening to that area anyway. So with that, it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That passes then, and again, we'll look at coming before council in the next 2 meetings for additional approvals in order to be finally passed at that second or the third meeting. So with that, that takes us to item 9, which is a public hearing on the proposed rezoning from A1 Agricultural District to R2 Residence District, approximately 14.43 acres of property located north of the Blackhawk Park Addition and west of Cypress Avenue. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes and takes us to written communications. Do we have any filed, Madam Clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Then moving into staff comments, we have Michelle Peasley from the planning section, and the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor Green and City Council members. Mr. Sands of Jim Sands Constructions owns a 46.25 acre property that is in the North Cedar District. It is north of Tomahawk Lane, Hiawatha, and Pocahontas Road, and west of Cypress Avenue. At this time, Mr. Sands proposes a rezoning of approximately 14.43 acres of his parcel. The applicant proposes of eventually developing this into a residential district, and the developer is open to adding a local park as well. Looking at the criteria as shown in the slide, the proposal matches the future land use map. The property has services from the south to serve the 14.43 acres and will have road access from Hiawatha and Pocahontas Road. As explained in the staff report, the two existing roads and the existing sewer would not be able to support the 64 acres, but staff finds that 14.43 acres could be supported with the existing infrastructure. This also gives Mr. Sands an opportunity to move forward with his development and working to find solutions to develop the rest of our property. Staff also wants to note that the Planning and Zoning Commission heard from the surrounding property owners that they're concerned about the stormwater of this property. Stormwater will be engineered to city standards and it will be reviewed at the time of the preliminary plat process. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the zoning application, and I'm available for questions, and Mr. Sands' representatives are here today as well.
Thank you, Ms. Pesley. Before going to that, if we have any public comments tonight, if you'd like to bring those forward, you're welcome to at this time. Okay, seeing none, then I will consider the public hearing closed and bring us over to 9E, which is passing an ordinance amending the zoning map by removing 14.43 acres of property located north of the Black Hawk Park Addition and west of the Cypress Avenue from A1 Agricultural District and placing the same in the R2 Residence District upon its first consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions and discussion if there is any.
I guess, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Canfield.
I'd like just for clarification on this. Obviously, this is just changing the ordinance, so it's like step one of. But where do we get the opportunity to say, hey, this is where the public park must be in accordance with the land use map? Is there a time for that to come?
That would be also within the preliminary plat process.
Okay, other questions or comments? Seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded to pass that ordinance amending the zoning map by removing 14.3 acres of property located north of Black Hawk Park Addition and west of Cypress Avenue from A1 to R2 upon its first consideration. Motion moved and seconded, requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that's the last of that part. I misspoke earlier. There's that one other item, item 5, that we've not covered yet, and I'd like to cover that if council doesn't mind before we go to the budget. That's the CF Storage LLC project. No objection. Then item 5, going back to 5, is the public hearing to consider entering into a proposed purchase, sale, and development agreement and minimum assessment agreement and to consider conveyance of city-owned real estate to CF Storage LLC. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, then Madam
Mr.
Clerk.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I need to recuse myself on this. This will be in direct competition to my storage units, which are within 3 miles.
Okay, thank you so much. So Councilmember Sires will recuse himself from this item. Do we have any written communications filed tonight?
I have no written communications on file.
Okay, thank you. So with staff comments, we have Shane Graham, our Economic Development Coordinator. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. If council might remember, back in November of 2022, council reviewed and turned down a proposed agreement with CF Storage for a new storage development on about 4.8 acres in the West Viking Road Industrial Park. That was located at the corner of Production Drive and Viking Road. With that request, that called for the city to donate the land at no cost in exchange for the developer to construct buildings with a total square footage of over 30,000 square feet and a taxable valuation of over 1.4 million. At that city council meeting in November, several concerns were raised about the project, such as the site not being the best location, as it was near the entrance to the industrial park and near residential uses. and also concerns about donating the land at no cost for this project. Since that time, the developer has been in contact with staff on working on finding a new location in the West Viking Road Industrial Park that was located away from the residential uses and more towards the interior of the park. And with that, a new location was chosen by the developer in order to address those concerns. And this new project that's before council tonight is on Lot 10, which is a 2.4 acre parcel located along Technology Parkway, just west of Production Drive and located east of Hawkeye Corrugated Box and north of Air King Filtration. In the council packet, you'll see a map that does show the previous location and the new location, just so you can get your references where those two locations were. For this project, the developer is not asking for the land to be donated on this at no cost. They are actually proposing to purchase it from the city directly. And that value, per the current policy of the $1.50 per square foot, would equate to $162,043. This project would still include 30,000 square foot of buildable area with a taxable valuation of over $1.5 million. And again, with this project, the developer is not asking for any other tax incentives as well. The developer will adhere to all requirements of the industrial park, including building design, signage, landscaping. The developer does not have an official site plan as of yet, but did provide several architectural renderings, which I did include in the council packet. Again, this purchase, sale, and development agreement was reviewed by both the city attorney and the developer and their attorney, and looking for council approval tonight. And I can answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graham. Before we have those questions, does anyone from the public wish to speak on the item? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed and bring us over to Part 5E, which is the resolution approving and authorizing execution of a purchase, sale, and development agreement and minimum assessment agreement, approving and authorizing execution of a deed without warranty, conveying certain city-owned real estate to CF Storage LLC. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions and discussion. Yes, Councilor Bear.
Well, I had three questions, really. Looking at the map that we were given, it looked like Hawkeye Corrugated Box was actually to the west, and that property that's to the east, is that an empty lot that's usable, or is that kind of wasteland?
I apologize.
triangle.
I apologize if I misspoke. Hawkeye Corrugated Box, yes, is directly to the west. There is about a 2.15 acre parcel located to the east. If you look at your map, it is kind of oddly shaped. I have received a letter of intent from a company that is looking to do a project on that lot. So I've gotten that information, and hopefully we'll have an agreement before council in the near future.
Okay, good. And then I already know the answer to this, Jen, but the money from the purchase of this land, does it go into TIF funds or does it go to the city budget?
So if it's in the TIF district, it'll go on the TIF fund then.
And then the last question, it just simply says CF Storage LLC. Are we allowed to know who the owner is?
If you look at the development agreement that's in your packet, it does state the members, Brian Winger and Trevor Kern are the members of CF Storage LLC. It's in the packet. Yep.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from council?
And they are here for any questions, sorry.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to know, I skimmed over the entire agreement, but the date of final is going to be December 31st, 2024. Do you have a speculative analysis if it's going to take that long, or do you think it's going to be completed well before that, or do we know?
Based on discussions with the developer, they would like to be done before that. We like to put that date in there because as of 1/1 of the following year is when the assessments get done by the county. So we would like to see it done by December 31st, although I believe they've indicated they would like to have it done before that.
Okay. And we couldn't do this year because we don't know about supplier delays or anything like that and potentials, correct?
True. I mean, that can be a question for the developer. I doubt that would be done. I mean, that'd be a pretty tall task to get that entire project done by the end of this year.
Okay, thanks, Shane.
All right. And any other comments or questions from council? Yeah, I'll say I had a misperception when this project came forward at the different location, I was assuming that this would be a need for residential, like homeowners would be bringing their stuff into that area. But what I've gathered from that industrial community, there is need in the industrial park for offsite storage for temporary storage of materials, equipment, things like that. So this actually would be a valuable addition for the industrial users of that area. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments, it's been motioned and seconded for the resolution approving and authorizing execution of that purchase, sale, and development agreement and minimum purchase or assessment agreement, and approving authorization and execution of a deed without warranty conveying certain city-owned real estate to CF Storage LLC. Moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote. Understanding Councilmember Sires is abstaining.
One abstention, all the rest council members voting aye.
Okay, thank you. So that does pass and takes us out of our second page here on the agenda, back to the first page. So we're at item 4 now, still in the special order of business. This is a public hearing on the proposed FY 2024 budget for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Move. Second. Second. Sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that does pass. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications filed for the budget?
I have no written communications on file.
Thank you, ma'am. For staff comments, we have Jen Rodenbeck, the Finance and Business Operations Director. So the floor is yours, Director Rodenbeck.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Tonight's the night for the public hearing for the FY24 budget. As you and the council are aware, the budget process can kind of be a long process. Many steps to get here, but based on the committee meeting from the April 3rd council meeting, staff did incorporate those voted on amendments into the budget you see tonight. So you can see in your packet tonight was the new state forms that has the rate at the $11.45. You may recall before the committee we were at $11.74, so now we're down to $11.45. And Denny, if you could put up on the screen, one of the things we always like to show, obviously, is what the real impact is to people. So if you take that, couple it with the rollback factors, you can see that with the $11.45 rate for residential properties, they would see about a 0.4% increase. Commercial industrial would see 0.5% decrease, and multi-residential would see the 14.72% decrease. So once a budget is approved tonight, then of course the full budget document would be out on our website, and if people have any questions, they can let myself know or anybody in the finance department.
Okay, thank you, Director Rodenbeck. So before having council comments and discussion, does anyone from the public wish to speak on the budget tonight in our hearing? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed for this item and take us over to Part 4E, which is a resolution approving and adopting the FY24 budget for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion. Who'd like to start us off? Councilor Harding?
Sure. I just have a question. Back to the committee meeting. Do we need to just start with that because of the possibility, or we would have to do that as a revision in the future if it passed to the council possibility of raising the.
So I think what you're asking is if we wanted to stay at the $11.74 rate, could we do that tonight?
No,
that's not what you're asking.
Sorry. What I'm asking is, since we have directed staff to make an ordinance to raise the council stipend
got it.
to $12,000, possibly, it's not passed yet, but half of the year, if it passes, half of the year, the fiscal year budget, would we need to do an amendment on the budget right now to factor that in, or would that be a budget amendment later in the future after the ordinance passes?
Sure. My advice at this point would probably wait to do a budget amendment in the future. And I say that because, one, it hasn't passed, like you talked about. But two, as it relates to our publication, we can't go higher on certain programs. So without going back and looking to see what all we took and what program they were in, we could potentially be over on that program. So my advice again would be just to wait to do a budget amendment.
That's
for
what I would
FY24.
want to do. I just was curious if we would have
Sorry about
not
when you
have
said
that
committee-
option.
when you said committee, I had in my head 2 weeks ago committee when we
Yeah.
talked about the budget. Sorry
We did a
about that.
committee tonight too, I think.
Okay, other comments?
I'll go so fast.
Councilor Cruz.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So, Council and Mr. Mayor, Mr. Gaines have seen the email I sent in. I guess I'd say concerned or wishfully looking at the income surplus that's shown in the finance guide, and trying to get what I had requested, I don't know how many meetings ago, to have no tax increase. And that would require us to get from 1145 levy rate to 1140. What I was zeroing in on in my research was the hotel motel tax revenue profit that's projected for fiscal 23 over and above the budgeted fiscal year 23. And doing my due diligence, I contacted the hotel owners in the area, covering actually many hotels throughout the Midwest. And I wanted to get some validation from them whether the revenue that's projected here of the $808,000 with what looks like a 408 surplus would be viable, and if they agreed with it. And they did indeed are comfortable with that projected surplus over the previous budget. So I would like to see at least enough money switched or carried forward from the surplus into the budgeted amount, however the terminology should be, so that we don't have a tax increase. And I believe, Ms. Rodebeck, you could comment on that, what we need to do.
I would like to see first if that's an amendment, to have that seconded so that we can then discuss it.
Amend the budget to include equaling no property tax increase.
Okay. Is that specific enough? Okay. Is there a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, so continue.
Ms. Rodebeck, can you comment on?
Sure. So, first of all, I want to just talk about the hotel motel revenue, the 800,000. That is a projection. So that isn't money we have in hand necessarily right this moment, but taking the first 3 quarters, divide by 3 times 4, that's where we got the 800,000 projection. But in saying that, I think the dollar amount that Mr. Cruz is looking for is that if we wanted to take 105, that's what it would take, 105,000 to get down to $11.40. So of, I think, the 200,000 extra you were talking about, Mr. Cruz, we would only need 105,000 of it to get down to the 1140 rate. So that's kind of in between, if you want to talk about a little bit of a compromise in terms of, we talked about 200,000 last time. Mr. Cruz is talking about an additional 200,000 by using 105,000. It's kind of in between there, I guess. So does that answer your question?
I wanted to get to that no tax increase level. I know I'd like to get considerably lower, but as has been explained to me, that the surplus isn't really necessarily a surplus because of bond sales, and it goes into various accounts from there, as was explained to me. So it sounds like staff is comfortable with that number of 105 to make it work.
Is that true?
People are going to ask more questions. Again, I think staff, we always a little nervous when we don't have the revenue in hand. But again, I think based on our first 3 quarters, I think we're feeling pretty safe that it'll come in, that we should have some extra with the 105,000.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Dunn.
I know this might be just a waste of breath, but I just think, we're not that far out of something that majorly affected our world. So if something like that happened again, where the world shut down, or just even Cedar Falls, if we just had like a big weather event or something. So if we cut ourselves too short, are we putting ourselves in danger? Because I remember the conversation when we were sitting through the pandemic of, thankfully, we had some smart decision-making that kept us in a safe place. And I just hate to put us in a spot where we cut our nose off to spite our face. Is that a saying? So, I mean, yeah.
Well, I think like you heard me say, it does always kind of make you nervous when you don't actually have the revenue. The one thing is that for hotel motel taxes, it is a quarter behind. So what we're receiving, like our last payment that we should receive here at beginning of June, is for a quarter that's already happened. We're a quarter behind. So in terms of, just like you said, if something came up again, a pandemic or whatever, I mean, it is going to affect future revenues. It will affect FY24 revenues, but what we receive in FY23, you know, probably going to be okay based on our first 3 quarters.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, for the use of that emergency reserve fund, if we're talking 105,000, we have about $1.5 million and trying to raise up to $2 million in the emergency reserve. My sense is if that were to happen, like if we really were in dire straits because of a weather event or whatever, I imagine the council would do the work to make us whole so that we're not in those dire straits. Now, 105,000 is different than if we were looking at like 2 or 3 million to try to cut. Like we wouldn't be able to cover it. We just want to make sure we keep in mind that we do have that emergency reserve fund, which I think is for these purposes. Yes, Councilor Harding?
I had a couple questions. So being that we're now basing the budget and the tax on projected revenue rather than money in hand, does that affect us when they audit us for our AAA rating, for our bond?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. AAA rating is about good financial management. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we got there. Cash reserves, low debt, good financial management. Now, I can also tell you a budget, just in the nature of a budget, is all about projections. You know, we're making a lot of decisions about expenses and revenues that are projections.
Okay.
And so, you know, and that's kind of the nature of doing a budget, I guess. So in terms of directly affecting a AAA, something like that, I don't think so. I think the concern would be more about is if we start deciding to use, you know, capital or cash amounts for operating costs, you know, not putting together a 5-year CIP, you know, those are things that Moody's looks for. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And then if this is something that the council wants to look at in future, is using this revenue stream to offset the general fund, should we not look at doing it back a year?
Sure.
I mean, it seems like, because then we know what we have. So is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, as everyone knows, is at goal setting, that's where we talk a lot about our financial policies. And maybe that's one for, you know, this next goal setting, maybe that's one we want to talk about is, like you said, it's kind of like we know, then we, you know, once we know what we have, then we plan for the next year and what to spend, or if there's extra, then we would know that. So I think that's absolutely, you know, some things we can talk about with our financial policy. I will tell you, the one thing that is kind of hard too about the budget this year is, you know, lowering it, everyone has to kind of remember too what's going on at the state level right now. They're talking about putting caps on how much your taxes can grow. So, you know, that's always kind of been our concern too about not pushing the levy rate too low, because you're going to get yourself stuck potentially in future years. But again, I'm not saying that about the 105,000 we're lowering. I just mean as an overall comment, I think we just, you know, when we're working on a budget, it's not just this year we're talking about. We're also trying to think of how are we setting ourselves up for the next 2 or 3 years as well.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Zars.
I have a kind of a twofold question, and I have an answer as well. But I believe the TIF districts need to have a sunset. I believe they're a burden on the people that live here in this community by withholding tax revenue that should come and help with the budget. That being said, that's a whole different argument. But I want to put that out there because I would like to look into the TIFs and having sunset clauses in there to help us with our budget and not burden the taxpayers. The one thing I would like to make a motion on, though, is instead of using our leftover money at the end of the year that isn't spent by different departments, I want that go straight to tax relief, not to a CIP. And I believe that should have been voted on every single year by every different council. How we spend our money, might be different than how somebody spent their money 10 years ago. So I'd like to make the motion that this year, in the budget, we bring that money back to the taxpayers, put that in the general fund for tax relief as a rebate or otherwise, instead of spending it on a CIP, because it's truly the taxpayers' money, and I like to see them get it.
So for Director Rodenbeck, could you speak on that for what the implications of that would be for our list of projects that we have?
Well, one, it would affect the list of projects on the CIP, just like you said, because we do have those planned out on the CIP. In terms of voting on that, one of the things, kind of back to what Mr. Harding was just talking about, so every year in the goal setting session, we talk about our financial policies. So I know like on 2-11 of the budget book, one of the policies that the council confirmed during goal setting was self-financing or cash will be used to fund one-time projects if excess cash reserves exist. So I don't know that you would necessarily have to do a motion tonight. I mean, you can, but it's also something we have on our financial policies that we go over every year in goal setting, that we could also talk about that policy at that time as well.
Yeah. So if we did this, as I understand what you're saying is, if this amendment was approved tonight to take the GFS, the general fund savings, and put it into tax fund relief, that would go against what the council already approved for its policy back in January.
For this year.
For this year, yeah. So looking at this, as they were looking at building up the budget, certainly I think what Director Rodenbeck is saying is that would be a great discussion for this next year's goal setting if we want to change it. But I would be leery about a council move to make a change tonight on that when we've already told council or staff to build a pretty significant budget using a separate policy that the council approved. If that makes sense. But with that, there is that, I think everyone understands what that amendment is on the floor, and it certainly is a valid motion. So is there a second to it? Okay, seeing no second, so that would die. But yes, I would love to have that as part of the discussion for goal setting this fall.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Gainfield.
If I may, Jen, excuse me. Could I have you reread that again? My memory from goal setting was that we also allowed for or other expenditure. Was that you just said was other one-time expenditure?
Yeah, I think what you're thinking about is, I think later on the goals, you're thinking about when we talked about adding the health reserve. Is that what you're,
Yeah, there was
you were
a
talking
grouping
about?
of things that we could use excess
Right,
funds
so
for.
I was just focusing, I guess, under the financial reserves where it talked about the long-term debt policies.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I know that one off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about other
That's fine. The clarification that there's two distinct things is helpful enough for this moment. I guess what I was thinking that afforded council the opportunity to do, as each of these items will come back before us, on what to do with these excess funds, we will at that time discuss where to earmark them. So there would be a forthcoming opportunity to say, hey, we want to take those excess funds and offset the general fund so that there is a tax reduction next year. So we still have that in policy.
Actually, yeah, right. So we would normally come back. It's usually about the beginning of September that we're doing that because we're closing out our books. You know, we're letting things go through like in July, first meeting in August. And so last year, I believe it was the first council meeting in September that we came with that resolution identifying where we want those excesses to go.
And Mr. Gainfield, you're correct. The language right out of the goal document is or other one-time expenses approved by City Council.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I believe we had a motion and a second to address
okay.
the hotel motel tax.
Okay,
Yeah,
my
the
apologies. We
105.
Okay, so we never
where we
addressed
were.
that. Okay, thank you so
We
much.
didn't finish the.
So
Mr.
with
Mayor,
that, I
excuse me,
apologize for
Mr.
that.
Mayor.
Yes.
Could I request that the actual amendment motion be restated so the minutes are clear? Because this is
Certainly.
budget time. We want to be very clear and very specific of what the amendment to the budget document is.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, are you able to read that for us?
And maybe Director Rodenbeck can help us there. I'm not sure.
I think there was just a motion on this table to amend the budget to a 0% increase, and that would come from the hotel motel tax of $105,000.
I think what the motion really probably is, just to make it clear, like you said, is to use $105,000 of the hotel motel tax excesses to lower the rate to $11.40. And the reason why I want to say that is, as you saw that chart up there, it's different for every class of property. So I just wanted to clarify, when we say 0%, we're talking about the residential 0. Now, it's going to be less than 0 for other properties, but that's why I think it's important to probably say the rate of $11.40. That way we're clear about what that is.
Okay. Does that, Councilmember Cruz, does that match what you're asking for?
I mean, we kind of backed into the number. I mean, I was thinking of 100 gave us a nickel, but it's 105 gives us a nickel.
Well, I made sure today, I did it on my state form, I made sure today, and it actually takes 105,000 to get to $11.40.
Okay.
Then with that as,
Right.
to maybe reinforce the, what's the word I want to use? The concern, or go against the answer to the concern that we might be putting us in danger of not having enough revenue from the hotel motel tax. My discussions with the hotel owners would have been Friday, and we're well into this quarter. We got 2 months left. In our conversations, they acknowledged that May is a busy month for hotel occupancy because of graduations from you and I, from high school, various events like that. They were very comfortable with the projections of this 808 to not be concerned. They did say that, in addition, I don't think I mentioned this, that the hotel rooms in our community, 2 big hotels were brought on right before COVID. Then they had the big COVID dip, and then they've recovered, and that's why part of the reason our numbers are greater than they were prior to COVID when I researched back there, and I discussed those numbers with them as well, and they were comfortable with that. Plus, they also volunteered the fact that there's convention facilities that are now online in our community, as well as things like the water park and the amusement park that are maturing and bringing more people to us as a destination city. And they were, as we talked through it, they were comfortable with that number. So the revenue is there, we feel.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the amendment? Yes, Councilor DeVere.
Just a quick question for Jen. Is what they're doing then is taking the re-estimated number from the actual number and then subtracting the 105? So does that still leave us with about 283,000 as potential?
So how I took it is, well, I think how I took it was that what we got extra in FY23, we were then going to use to lower the property taxes in FY24.
Okay.
So, I think what you're saying is if we got 800,000, is that what you're saying? We would still have extra then, potentially, of hotel, assuming we get the 800,000. It could be more. We don't get the payment until June, so is that, did I answer your question, sorta?
Sort of. I was just trying to do the math, and I was calculating out that we still had about 284,000 extra. But
okay.
But
keep in mind, though, that's in hotel motel
Right.
that will have extra. We do have funds that are running significantly under. For instance, building the building permit fees are significantly down this year. So,
All right. With that, we have an amendment on the floor. I'd open it up to the public if there's any comments on just the amendment. Okay, seeing none, then any final comments before we vote on the amendment itself? Yes, Councilmember Schultz.
I would just thank Mr. Cruz for all his research and certainly point out that being a destination city is reasons why we support things like the Uni Dome and the Cedar Falls swimming pool to make this more of a destination city.
All right, thank you.
Good job, Darrell.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, then just for the amendment, it would require a voice vote. So all in, should we read this again? Please. Madam Clerk, you want to just read it one last time?
Do you
want me to?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
So
Director Unbeck.
I think the amendment was to use 200,000 of excess hotel or 105,000 of excess hotel motel revenues in FY23 to lower the tax rate in FY24 to $11.40.
For residential properties.
Well, the $11.40 will be for all properties. So I think
for
we can
0% on residential properties.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that does pass as being put back into the original motion. Any other amendments to bring forward tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Workers?
Something that just kind of popped out out at me here with the approval of the land sale in our industrial park. It's stating that we're getting an immediate payment of $162,043. They did say it was going to go into the TIF fund. Would that extra windfall be eligible to be used as more property tax reduction?
Because it's in the urban renewal area, it will have to go towards the TIF fund. It would not be able to be used for property tax.
But isn't many of the projects on the CIP urban renewal? We're rebuilding the city.
So I think it has to go, because of the debt that we have incurred out in the industrial park, that those monies have to be applied towards that debt.
Okay, then I guess, okay. I mean, I'll continue to ask. To Mr. Sire's comment about having some of this money released for general GO funds, general obligation funds. It's got to be a vote of council at the next goal setting to determine if what he wants to do.
So actually, the appropriate timing to do that is every year to the council in November, we bring our TIF certifications. And so you'll see them for every TIF district, our Pinnacle Prairie, Downtown, Unified. And at that time, council's also certifying the debt, which we have to send over to the county. And so that's actually the time that you would have to basically direct staff to not certify the debt or to decertify the debt if you wanted to tear down the TIF. And so, again, that time would be, we always have to do it in November council meeting because it's due into the county by December 1st. Okay. Unless we wanted to have goal setting early, but that's why we always do it in November.
So this money could be used to pay down the debt earlier, which would give us a ripple effect of paying off a mortgage sooner type of
Sure.
thing?
The land, the one you were just talking about?
Yeah, the
land.
162,000.
Yeah, anything like that helps in terms of, bringing revenue in more and reducing that, paying it off sooner.
And how's that chosen to be done?
Mr. Mayor.
It's still a question on the floor, so how's that chosen to be done?
Yeah, at what?
So all those things flow through our TIF fund. So you have to remember with TIF, it's a reimbursement type. So we're certifying every year any expenses we had, but we're also then taking those expenses less any revenue we got. So that's how it would work. We would do the net amount. So sometimes we've had reimbursements on projects. Maybe we had a project and we got a grant. Well, we're only certifying that net amount. We're only taking the expenses less the revenue that comes in. So that's what would happen here.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is steering a little bit away from the budget, but I do understand that has an implication for the budget, like how you want, since it all ties together. So that's totally fine.
Big pile of money.
Yes, Councilor Harding?
I was just going to say, it indirectly ties together, but the TIF conversation can be another day, I think, personally.
Councilmember Ganfield, did you have something?
That was it. My question was the germaneness of the topic, but we can move on.
All right. Yes. All right. So with that, any other amendments or discussion? Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded for the resolution approving and adopting the FY 2024 budget for the City of Cedar Falls as amended. Moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us out of the special order of business for tonight and over into old business. That's on page 3. Item 10 is passing ordinance 3025, amending Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing procedures for Planning and Zoning Commission review and City Council approval of site plans in the Downtown Character District upon its third and final consideration. 5 aye votes are required here at Council due to the denial or recommended denial by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none. Then moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Four voting aye, 3 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does fail, which does, since it's on its third reading, it is The previous two votes of ayes are negated tonight, so it fails tonight and does not move forward. Item 11 is passing ordinance 3026, amending Chapter 26 zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to conditional use for adaptive reuse of defunct institutional buildings upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion or questions? Or any from the public? Okay, seeing none, then moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Six voting aye, one voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us out of, so that is approved on its second consideration. We'll have one more vote coming forward at our next council meeting for approval. That takes us out of old business and into the consent calendar, where these items will be acted upon by a voice vote in a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. And we're more than happy to pull any item you'd like. Does any council member request to pull an item from 12 to 16? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone from the public wish to pull an item from 12 to 16? Okay, then is there a motion to approve those items from 12 to 16?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that does pass. And takes us over to the resolution calendar. Well, these items will be acted upon by a roll call vote in a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member request to pull an item from 17 to 30? And does anyone from the public request to pull an item from 17 to 30? Okay, so is there a motion to approve those items 17 through 30?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And over into, so those do pass, and over into bills and claims. Item 31 is allowing bills and claims for April 17th. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that does pass then. So bringing us over to council updates and announcements. Do we have any for tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Dunn.
kind of piggybacking, and I didn't feel like it was appropriate time to, but my two oldest children and I went out to the career fair or the job fair this Saturday. It was a great event. I always enjoy watching our staff work, but I just kind of want to bring attention. How many staff were there? Because it was, I mean, there was probably at least like 20 or to 30 people, right? I mean, giving their Saturday. I just want to bring that, in case you weren't there, I feel like that's an important thing to recognize. It was a Saturday, it was a beautiful day, and our staff were doing their thing. I mean, I don't know, it warms my heart. So good job. Thanks for giving us your time and all your expertise and your service to our city.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other announcements? Yes, Councilmember DeBoer.
Not really an announcement, but a question. If we wanted to try to extend our leaf, we had quite a few calls about extending the April reduced price leaf pickup into May like we did last year. Would that have to be by referral, or can that just be done by staff?
Well, it's a change to the fee schedule, correct? So that would have to be an amendment to the fee schedule.
And then it would take 3 readings, wouldn't it?
Just by resolution.
Just a resolution. But we couldn't do it tonight.
Right. We can't do it tonight because of lack of notice.
Right.
And it would already be passed. It'd be into May already.
Right. So that might be a little late for this year on that one then. Other questions, comments, or announcements?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Sires.
I was contacted by Andrew Chardonians, and he lives here in Cedar Falls. He has Australian Labradoodles, and they're bred for their service work and their therapy work. and he would like to donate 2 of them to the city of Cedar Falls. That falls right in with Mr. Ganfield wanting me to pitch in. Well, I found a guy that will donate these, since I can't get my German Shepherds or my Malinois with the stainless steel teeth. That is truly a real thing. I know you guys thought I was just embellishing, but he'd be glad to talk with Officer Howard, and these are great, great dogs, and they would be perfect to fit in for the public relations end of it, and they're great sniffers, and they are bred to be service dogs, and he lives right here in Cedar Falls. So I just wanted to have that announcement that that's a great thing, and the people of Cedar Falls want to have good dogs, and I think it'd be fantastic if we had our own Cedar Falls dogs there. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Sires. Also, a note, too, that if you mark on your calendars, we are still planning to have our ribbon cutting and open house for the remodeled City Hall. The plan is to do that right before the second meeting of May, so it's May 15th from 4 to 6 p.m., assuming that there's no issues with building. We still have a few pieces we want to add in for the construction, but it looks like everything's on track for that. So I hope that you'll be able to join us, again, prior to the May 15th council meeting. Any other questions or announcements for tonight? Okay, seeing none, then any council referrals this evening? Okay, have none. So one last thing for housekeeping. Shoot, I forgot it. Dang. Okay, I'll post it. But
Earth Week?
Yes, Earth Week, of course. Thank you so much. Earth Week is this week, and so we have folks out doing cleanup all throughout the week. The city website has information about how to participate, and city staff will be out Thursday afternoon as well. So if any council members want to join us for that, you're more than welcome to. It's amazing to see what sorts of things get left on the roadside. So hope to have you join us, and if you would like to do it individually or as a crew, city website also lists some places around the community that are you can pick up bags and things like that, and where you can drop off the materials as well. I also want to give a special shout out to the Cedar Falls cleanup group that's very active on social media. Jeremy Swanson heads up that group of folks, and they're doing a fantastic job recognizing, and businesses are offering donations, gift cards, things like that throughout the year. So very happy to see this become a citywide event these last few years, and look forward to having it continue in the years ahead. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.